You gotta get into the groove.
What is up, football fans, and welcome to the Saturday Pigskin presented by Time and Money Saver. Full house again today and a fully loaded show as always. We got the former Mansfield Tigers quarterback, coach, and just all-around legendary figure here in the Mansfield area, Effie James, on the show once again. And then spending 5 years at the Richland Source as the premier sports writer, covering local sports here in the area since 1996. Curt Conrad also going to be a part of the show. We have a ton to get to, including two big games from the Ohio Cardinal Conference last night, so I'm not going to waste no time. Let's just dive right in to the Richland Runback. Lexington hosting West Holmes on homecoming night. Minutemen fresh off an upset beatdown of Mansfield Senior, looking to stay in the OCC title hunt. And though they had a lot of momentum coming into the game, things did not start well for the purple and gold. We began here with Bridger Klein, a 79-yard connection to Grady Hay. He had 178 receiving yards and this score on the night. That put West Holmes up early. Then later on, it's Jacob Depperschmidt, picked off by Gavin Sheldon, who's going to return it all the way back for 6 points. The Minutemen would trail in this thing 20-7 midway through the second quarter. Then the big play started to pile up for the Lex offense. Just like we saw last week over at Arlen Field, Josh Aiello had two long touchdown grabs. There's one of them right there. Alex Green had a couple explosive plays. Depperschmidt threw for 240 yards and 3 touchdowns in this game. But coming up, this Shane Jones touchdown reception you're about to see would give the Knights a 6-point fourth quarter edge. Now enter the Minutemen closer, Cade Stover. We saw this last week, Effie. When he gets through the hole, this man can really run.
Absolutely. He ran away from the Tigers last week and looks like he's doing the same thing to West Holmes this week. He's certainly a difference maker in tight ball games and made a difference that night.
49-yard touchdown run there, put Lex up one. Knights were driving a field goal range, though 32-yarder. It's wide left, and Lexington survives. They knock off West Holmes 34-33 on homecoming night, and waving their purple flag out there proudly in Lexington country. Mansfield Senior now looking to avoid their first 4-game losing streak since 2011. Community Stadium, not an easy place to do it. Hadn't beat the Arrows on the road since 2013. Could tonight be the night? Well, the Mansfield Senior defense certainly tried to make it that way. Angelo Gross off the edge for the sack. This Tigers defense was phenomenal early on in this game, as was their smash mouth clock control football style on offense. They ran it 60 times, guys, including this 31-yard Trayshawn Wyndham touchdown scamper. Later on in the game, it's Tavion Harris who would make it 12-0 in favor of the Tigers. They missed both extra points that would be key in this game late. Fast forward you now to the fourth quarter, where it's Amajian Robertson making it 19-0 in favor of the Brown and Orange. He had a big-time day, did he, for the Tigers, a $122 on the ground. It looked like they were going to cruise to a big victory, but all of a sudden, the big yards started to pile up for Mitch Heilman. 22-yard touchdown cost there to Cade McQuaid. It's just a 2-score game. This trimmed it down to a 1-score game, 14-yard hookup again to McQuaid. Now under 4 minutes remaining, Heilman is going to look and find Ross Garrison for the go-ahead score. It's 21-19. The Arrows are going to win this thing. Last chance for the Tigers, who barely threw it all night, but they do connect. Cam Todd to Angelo Gross, 5-yard game winner, 26-21. Absolutely wild affair at Community Stadium. The Tigers avoid a 4-game slide as they knock off the Arrows for the big-time victory on the road. So clearly, boys, the OCC got a lot more interesting last night with those. I would say there were upset wins just in terms of the seeding in the conference as of last night. Curt, you were over at the Mansfield Tiger game. What just were your overall thoughts and impressions of the way that they looked? That they were dominant for pretty much the entire contest.
Yeah, I think that Mansfield Senior really established its identity last night. I mean, you know, when you think of senior high, you think a team that can score from anywhere on the field. This is a 4 or 5 yards at a time team. I mean, they put together a 98-yard drive. It took, 7.5, 8 minutes off the clock. This is a power run. They were playing 2 tight ends at a time and 2 running backs. This is a team that's a power run team. And then in the fourth quarter, or late in the fourth quarter, when they needed to throw it, Cam Todd, the quarterback, showed the ability to drop back into the shotgun, and he could throw it down the field. So it was a really impressive all-around performance offensively, I thought.
I would agree. And then Lexington getting it done over West Holmes. In your opinion, Effie, what was the bigger win, the more impressive win to you? Mansfield going on the road and beating Ashland, or Lexington back-to-back wins after they were left basically dead in the water a couple weeks ago?
Well, I mentioned last week that if any team had the skill and could pull it together and beat an Ashland or even a Worcester, was Mansfield Senior. So even though that's an upset win, it was in my opinion that they could get it done. Now, to me, a bigger upset, if you will, is Lexington beating West Holmes. You know, Lexington for first few games of the season were, for lack of a better term, sleepwalking, because they just didn't look like they had the weapons. They didn't look like they had the offense, and their defense gave up a lot of points. They are now a team that has figured out what, we talked last week about. Sometimes it takes some time to figure out what type of team you're going to be, what your strengths are. They have figured it out, and one of the things I think they've figured out is let Stover win or lose games for you. Put the ball in the kid's hands however he gets it, and we're going to ride with him. And they've done a great job of that. But also, they've increased their big plays, and we saw a lot of some passes down the field. They're turning people over in this game, I believe so. And so with Lexington, that is a huge win, and that really just makes a jumble out of the OCC race.
The Generals are the only 4-0 team in the league play, and they still have the Tigers and Arrows coming up on their schedule. Give me some of your predictions, Curt. What do you see happening as we get down to these final 3 weeks of the OCC? How's it all going to shake out in your mind?
Well, I mean, next week I think is a huge game. Senior High hosts Worcester at Arlen Field. Arlen Field's a tough place to play. Everyone knows that. And Senior High, I think if they continue to do the things that made them successful last evening, I mean, there's no reason they can't win that football game. So, I mean, I don't see the OCC champion having no losses this year.
Right. I agree, and you had said to me last week that you thought that Mansfield could still get back in the conference chase, and I agree. I actually think they're probably the most talented team in the OCC, just unfortunately they didn't have a couple of results go their way. I still kind of believe that, but with the 2 losses, I feel like the Tigers are out of it. Generals, though, do you feel like that is the team to beat? Do you think it's Ashland? What do you think, Effie? Who's going to win this thing?
No, wow, that's an interesting question, because it's hard when, in my view, and I think I would have to say from the beginning, I thought that Mansfield was the most talented team in the league. But now in their situation, they're not going to be able to win the league. So, Worcester is probably the safest bet, but Mansfield with, like we talked about last week, they could make a mess of this thing by beating Ashland and Worcester, and they certainly are capable of doing that. And the other interesting thing is Mansfield, even though they don't right now at this point have a chance to win the league, could still sneak in the back door of postseason. So they have a lot to play for, which gives them even more motivation to go out and get this win against Worcester.
Let's look at the playoff picture real quick. Mansfield's 10th in D3 Region 10. Lexington's right behind them in 11th. And then Worcester and Ashland both on the outside of the playoff picture in D2 Region 7. West Holmes way out in Region 9. Is there a possibility we get no Ohio Cardinal Conference teams in the playoffs?
Wow, that would be unthinkable. And I think that it says a lot, though, about the competition in the area and specifically in the league. I don't think that's anything that the league team should feel bad about. I think the fact that every night you have to come to play says a lot about your league. It would be a shame, though, I think, for us as football fans not to have a local team to get in, but it is a distinct possibility that could happen.
Curt, who do you think has the best opportunity of any of these teams in the OCC to play themselves back into the playoff picture?
I think that you got to look at one of the D3 schools. The D2 schools, they're just not enough points available, D3, Senior High and D3, even Lex in D3, I mean, if they continue to win, in that region, Region 10 is not, I mean, certainly not taking any shots at it, but it is not as strong as it has been in the past. They could, backdoor themselves into an 8 seed or a 7 seed there, and then I wouldn't want to play Mansfield Senior in the playoffs. No. not at all. I mean, that's a team that is dangerous. They can hurt you in a lot of different ways, and same with Lex. I mean, Lex has the best player in the area, and it's really not that close. And do you really want to go on a one-time deal with Curt Conrad? That's a tough proposition.
And when you think about it, the fact is Mansfield has a quarterback that they're still breaking in.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's going to get better and better. He's only played 2 games. So we really don't know how explosive this offense can really be, but I think they're starting to see that now. And to me, that just adds more mystery to what they can be down the stretch of this season and into the postseason.
Well, we all feel that the Tigers may be probably the most talented team in the OCC. The best area team, though, in my opinion, Clear Fork, put a hurting on Galleon last night. They dropped 69 on the Tigers, 69-35. Do you guys agree that probably Clear Fork is the best team that we have within about a 3-county radius?
I was doing some prep work before we came on, and I can't find the last time a Clear Fork team scored 69 points, and that goes back to 2000. So I mean, that's the most points they've scored in better part of 20 years. They have a lot of weapons, and they're running a two quarterback system. I don't know what everyone's thoughts are about that. I mean, that seems to me like that could be kind of tough, but they're making it work. And I would imagine Dave Carroll was displeased with the defensive effort last night. I think they gave up 35 first half points. Which
they did.
Dave's a defensive guy. His brother's a defensive guy. I would imagine that didn't settle well this morning during film study or whatever. But that's a team that in that region I would not want to play them.
They're currently ranked number 1 in D4 Region 14. I imagine that they're going to be the team to beat in there. Do you feel like this is a team that has the type of weapons that can make a run, a journey all the way to state? I mean, granted, if they stay healthy?
Well, anytime you have kids at that level, at the high school level, period, you got a team that can score in many different ways. They've got big play athletes. They still got remnants of the ground and pound that we know Clear Fork to be. But they're also a big play offense now. They got 2 capable quarterbacks, and like Curt was saying, sometimes that could be difficult to manage, but they have done a great job managing that system, and the kids have grown accustomed to it and are playing well and thriving in it. So offensively does not seem to be the issue. The issue would be defensively. You can't give up 35 points to a lesser caliber opponent, and if they can get those things together, they could make a huge run. And at that level, and who knows, state Final Four, who knows for that team. They've got that type of team.
Yeah, offense hasn't been a problem. Almost 700 yards for them last night. But like you mentioned, the 35 first half points that they allowed, none though in the second 2 quarters. So I'm sure Dave Carroll had a couple of choice words for his kids at the half. They also got some help in the MOAC race. A huge surprise. Buckeye Valley stunned Marion Pleasant 18-6. I'm still having trouble reading that, but that's what happened. Ontario then lost their 3rd straight, 16-13. Over their last 2 weeks, they lost by a combined 6 points. I'm just curious to get your guys' thoughts on the Warriors just collectively on the season, because I've seen them in person, I want to say 3 times. I think they're actually a pretty good football team that just, that they're so close, but they're just missing one element, maybe some quarterback play at this point.
I think, and if you could maybe back me up here, learning to win is a process, and you're losing these close games. I mean, I watched a couple years ago a Shelby team that had Brennan Armstrong as a quarterback lose a bunch of games in the 4th quarter, and then as he matured and grew, I mean, those turned into wins, and then they turned into really big wins. I think Chris Miller's done an admirable job here in a very short period of time, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them get things turned around and be a team that needs to be reckoned with in the MOAC going forward here.
Yeah, I agree. A winning culture is something that, is worth points in a football game. It really is. And I've always, when I coach basketball, one of the things I've done, and I got criticized by some people for it, but one of the things I've done the first game of the season, we always put a team on the schedule that was going to be athletic, but one that I knew talent-wise we were going to be able to beat, because I wanted to start the year off saying, getting that culture in place and saying we are winners, we can win games. And a lot of times when you have young teams, you've got to establish that, and in some cases, you've got to manufacture that through your scheduling. But Ontario is one of those schools that are right there. And like you said, maybe some quarterback play, the loss of Cam Todd is evident in their program, and that happens. You know, that's the day and age we live in. You know, it is. You know, Mansfield Senior was the, you know, they were recipient this year. They have lost. We have lost a lot of talented players to transfer also. But Ontario, if I was, you know, and Chris Miller was here, and he is doing a great job, and if they keep going along the path that they're going now, I think they'll be fine. He's doing a great job of developing the winning culture. They just got to get some wins, and then the kids will start to believe, I believe.
You mentioned Shelby and Brennan Armstrong, all the wins they had the last couple of seasons. They were off to a great 3-0 start this year, dropped their last three. They bounced back last night, 33-7. They take down Edison. Whippets crawl back up into kind of the playoff mix now. They're 11th in their region. Curt, do you feel like there's any chance that Shelby gets to week 11 this year? They still have Port Clinton on the schedule, who's 4-3, and Oak Harbor, who's 6-1 the next 2 weeks.
There's some points games out there for them. They got to take care of business. And you know, talking to Eric Will a couple weeks ago, I covered the game up in Norwalk, and he said, you know, this and Shelby lost, I think 49-0. It was Eric said it was a product of a poor week of practice, and you know, you can't have that, and you know, and those are the things that'll kill you here down the road.
You've got to practice well, and again, that comes back to knowing who you are as a team, right? Because certain things after the midpoint of the season, you don't practice anymore. You know, if you figured out, you know, we thought we were going to be doing this well, and all of a sudden we don't do this well anymore, okay, we scrapped that. Now we got to practice and get better at the things that we're good at. And if you don't practice well, you're certainly not going to play well on Friday night. I know Eric recognizes that.
I think Uriah Schwemley was back to his former self. He suffered an injury a few weeks ago, was in concussion protocol. It looked like last night he was back to doing the things that he does. And I talked to McGuire Albert, the quarterback, earlier in the season, and you know, I said it must be a rare luxury to have the state high jump champion, you know, out there on the edge. I mean, if you know, worst comes to worst, just throw it up there and let him go get it.
Absolutely.
Let's take a quick peek at the Northern 10 now, where Winford bounced back last night, 51-14. They crushed Upper Sandusky after they lost their first ever conference game in the Northern 10 last week to Seneca East. They were going to play undefeated Mohawk here in a couple of weeks, probably is going to decide the outcome of this thing. Do any of you two see the Royals actually making that happen and winning another Northern 10 crown?
I wouldn't see why not. I mean, you talk about culture and winning culture. I mean, that's a program that, you know, they're used to playing in these games, and that you can't. I mean, that's a big deal, you know, when you get into those situations, you know, having been there before, and you know a little bit about that.
Yeah, winning games and big games and championship games, and that's the thing about league play. The interesting thing about league play is you approach every game like a championship game. And as many as Winford has won, that means so much to the experience of the kids. Even if they hadn't played in the game, they've been in those environments, and that means a lot. And you look at the Shelby kids, even though they've struggled here the last couple of weeks, the fact that they've been in those big games and won those big games is going to help them down the stretch. And for Winford, it would shock me if they didn't come through and end up winning this league like they always do.
Royals had some big play from their secondary players. I think they had 3 pick sixes is what I read, if I'm not mistaken. So big performances by them. Lots of other players here in the area had big performances. Let's see who they are right now in Friday Night Phenoms, brought to you by MWD Logistics.
We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
Let's begin with a little bit of a cop-out on my part. I couldn't just pick one guy from the Clear Fork offense because of how many total yards they had. 8 total touchdowns, 2 for the Colts. We were talking about them just a few minutes ago, all the different weapons. This is probably the best offensive team that we have here in this area, just because you never know where it's going to come from. You really don't.
The matchups that they have, they're so tough to match up against. And when you have so much a variety of talent, it's just very hard to stop them from scoring points. And you know, the schedule that they play makes it difficult. They may have, playing teams like Mansfield Senior and even some of the OCC teams, had a better chance of matching up with them talent for talent. But right now, the Clear Fork Colts, and they are rolling, and they have a lot of weapons, like Curt was saying earlier.
Yeah, they have been rolling. And speaking of which, this dude, Trevon Raymore, last night for the Truckers, you see those asterisks there, if I could say it right, a couple of program records, and not against just any team. In a big-time rivalry game against Sandusky, this kid ran absolutely berserk. 40 carries. Every single week, it seems like he gets stronger as the game goes on. Almost 400 yards, 6 touchdowns on the ground. Like, my brain's having trouble processing, Curt. Crazy.
And a game like that, there's no shortage of athletes on the field, and he's a guy who certainly stood out. I saw him a few weeks ago, and he's a load, and what I like about him is he's a big, strong guy, but he runs like a little scatback guy, and he is the total package, that's for sure.
Broke the Truckers' single-game record for rushing and then tied their touchdown record. Jeb Grover, another difference maker, also setting some records, 350 yards on the ground, 6 touchdowns, and oh, by the way, named Homecoming King last night. You want to talk about winning? This kid right here, number 44, he does it all, passing Mason Galco to become the program's career rushing leader. 5,330 yards is what he has during his 4-year career. Special.
I just love to see the teams now, high school teams, going back to power running, power backs, big kids being actual running backs that can run. And in this day and age of spreading the football out, throwing it all over the field, Grover has really shown that being a power back is where it's at.
He talks about being a state high jump champion. Uriah Schwemley, a complete game changer for them. He didn't play for a week, and Shelby just got their butts spanked a couple of weeks ago. Now with number 3 on the field, this is the dimension that he can bring. He can outrun guys. He can break tackles. He can shake dudes in the open field. He's just unbelievable. 4 catches, 3 of them for tutties.
That's video game numbers, right? I mean, have 181 yards on 4 catches. I'm no mathematician, but that's a pretty big yards per catch average. And he has a little bit. I remember watching Carter Brooks last year and making plays down the field like this, and this is another guy just like that, just explosive.
And oh, by the way, 13 tackles to lead the team on the night. The Lexington offense, I did not think that we could say this during the season after I saw them during the first couple of weeks. Now they have everything going. Even last week against Mansfield Senior in the win, they only threw it 3 times. They just kept handing it off to Cade Stover and Caden Berry, which they did a lot this week, but also 240 passing yards from Jacob Depperschmidt, and then they're rushing 370 yards again. They got the total engine rolling this week.
Well, I think Depperschmidt is really figuring it out, and the coaching staff is figuring out. We talked about earlier about sometimes you got to shrink what you do and get better at what you're good at. And I think Lexington is really doing that now. Their passing game seems to be simple, but very effective. They're using a lot of big plays. And at the end of the day, giving it to this guy is always going to be a good thing.
Cade Stover is just absolutely unbelievable as of late. The speed that he's been displaying, I think he is faster this year. I think that you notice it out on the field as a senior. Cade Stover, he's a grown man out there playing amongst boys. And that's why Lexington, a big reason why they got the win in the student section, had a trillion reasons to go crazy last night during homecoming. And then Mansfield Senior, the run game, our final award this week, 60 total carries, 294 yards, 3 touchdowns. What I like about it the most is that 3 guys got it done. Curt, you were on the sideline with me. I mean, you got to give the big guys up front a lot of the credit, and then the guys behind them. It was a great display.
Yeah, in my 20 years of covering Mansfield Senior football, this is the most big, strong, and athletic offensive lineman that they've ever had. I mean, they got 5 guys, and then they probably got 5 guys who can come in and replace those 5 guys if they needed to. In my experience, it's a lot more important who's plowing the road for you than who's carrying the ball, and those guys up front are doing a heck of a job.
Fun to watch, Effie, when they got this thing going with these 3 backs behind these big bodies.
Well, this is who they are. And earlier in the year, I think this is who they were. But when they brought in Cam Todd, people may have thought, well, now we're a passing team. But no, this is who they are. They are 2 tight end, ground and pound, and 300 yards rushing. That's who they are. And now they've got a quality quarterback that can mix in a really solid passing game. That's why I think they're going to be dangerous down the stretch. But this offense really looks good right now.
And that's why they're Friday Night Phenoms this week, brought to you by MWD Logistics. So obviously some really impressive performances this week. Collectively, though, through 7 weeks, you guys have been paying attention to the local landscape here. Who's the most impressive player that you have seen, Curt? Who stands out to you on the football field?
I think defensively, it's number 8 in purple and gold. I mean, I've never seen in 20 years around here. He's the best defensive player I've covered. And you look at the stats that they turn in, and you say, he had Cade Stover had 29 tackles. That's impossible. But it's not impossible.
Not for him.
I mean, he makes every tackle, and when he arrives, you know he's arrived. I mean, he gets there and he'll hit the lights out of you.
Right. I think, I think Cade is easily, definitely a legitimate recruit. When I look at the Angelo Gross is so impressive as just an all-around player, and of course he's got speed and he's got ability, but I watched his total game, and if you watch him punt the football, he's probably one of the best punters senior high's had in years. He can return kicks. He pretty much can do it all, and that's what's so impressive about the young man. And he's only a junior, which is scary. But when I look at an all-around football player, and the fact that he seems to just absolutely love the game, and he's got to be a coach's dream because he plays both sides of the ball, seemingly doesn't get tired, and he is just a special athlete, and I'm definitely impressed by him so far this year.
I wish I had something new to add, but of the games that I've watched, Angelo Gross absolutely stands out because he's in almost every down, playing a bunch of different positions, like you said. And then Cade Stover, I agree too. He's easily the best defensive player that I've ever personally watched in a high school uniform. I watched his very first ever high school game against Ontario at safety, and I remember saying, who is that kid? And he's twice the player that he is now. Collective thoughts through 7 weeks. What stands out to you guys about just everything that we've seen in North Central Ohio on the gridiron for, basically most of the regular season now?
I really love what the Lucas Cubs are doing. And they're a Division 7 team. They're more than likely going to get into the playoffs here again, largely because they're playing a schedule that includes a lot of D3s and D4s because they're an independent. They kind of have to. But that, if you watch them play, it's not the most aesthetically pleasing offense, I guess, but I wouldn't want to have to try and tackle Jeb Grover 40 times a game. That wears you down. So, and in D7 and in their region, it's Region 27, which is kind of through Southeast Ohio. I'm certainly not going to disparage any programs, but there's been some success from teams around here getting to the state semifinals, going through that region that includes Southeastern Ohio. So, I think the door's open there for them to have something special here in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, the Clear Fork story to me is one that is really, really interesting because it seems like with them being in the OCC for a long time, we've watched them kind of mature and also evolve into who they are right now. And what they are right now is an offensive juggernaut who can score almost 70 points on teams where before they were a really ground and pound team that lined up in I remember the days when they were in wing T and where they just wanted to keep the ball away from the other team.
Not that long ago.
It wasn't that long ago, so that's why I'm so impressed with the way Coach Carroll has evolved this team and this program and their numbers. And you watch them play, you look on the sideline, they got a ton of kids playing football, and that to me is really impressive. When the overall numbers are down for football in high school, but when you got a program that can keep your numbers up, you're winning games, you got athletes coming out now, that story is really impressive, and I'm impressed by their wins and their entire program at this point.
Clear Fork to me is the one team that I wrote down. They're following up on the heels of a season where they started 11-0. They're 7-0 again, and like you said, they're just steamrolling some folk, doing it offensively. I also think the parity's pretty cool. Amongst the couple of top teams like you guys just mentioned, then there's a whole bunch of mishmash of just a whole bunch of other teams fighting it out in the middle of conferences. So it's been a lot of fun to watch, and it's been a lot of fun talking football with you guys. But that's it for the Saturday Pigskin for this week. We will see you back here again for Week 8. So long.